I'm going to go ahead and call this special session of July 30th to order. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Bierman. Councilmember Carter.
Here.
Councilmember Patron. Here. Councilmember Hickman.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson.
Here. Oh, what's her name?
Councilmember Scanlon.
Here.
Councilmember Holman.
Here.
Councilmember Scott.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here. Now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 is consideration of the mayor's appointments to the Ward 4 Candidate Selection Committee, consisting of George Amati, Greg Youngman, Andy Rieger, Lintha Wessner, Emily Wilkins. I will entertain a motion to accept or reject to accept these appointments.
Motion to accept. Second.
The motion on the floor is to confirm the consideration of the mayor's appointments to the Ward 4 Selection Committee. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. You may cast your vote. It's unanimous. We're voting?
No, it was unanimous.
Yeah, okay. All right, now we will move on to item 4, Resolution 1920-20, establishing a new special revenue fund, public transportation and parking fund, accepting federal transportation administration funds when received, transferring $1,135,500 from the general fund, and appropriating $4,080,323 from the general fund for the implementation of expanded city public transit operations. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved. Second.
I'm now going to recognize Mr. Sean O'Leary, Director of Public Works, to provide a PowerPoint presentation for the next 5 items. I also want to announce that public comments will be accepted for the next 5 items now. We will not comment on each 5 item. So with that, Mr. O'Leary.
Thank you, Mayor. Sean O'Leary, Director of Public Works. I think I'm slowly becoming your Director of Transit, but I think you could do a lot better. But before I get started, thank you for acknowledging the 5 items. I would like to cover all those in my presentation. Also want to acknowledge some really hardworking folks in the room who have gotten us to this point. From our legal department, Catherine Walker and Christina Bell. I literally got an email from Christina Friday morning at 1 a.m. I've never had a staff email me at 1 a.m. I've had midnight and that sort of thing, but really hardworking folks here. From our partners at the University of Oklahoma, Chris Glenn is here from CART. And from our partners at Embark, Jason Fairbrush and Haley Rawson are here. And all these folks have put a lot of hours in getting us here tonight. And of course, they'll be here to answer questions if you have any of those. Thanks also for the special session. We are acknowledging, as we'll discuss here, taking over this system next Monday. So we're literally out of time for any other opportunities to get all of this done and get contractually secured, I guess, to take over this operation next Monday. So I'm going to do a little background for those who in the audience who might not know all the background. Certainly council understands this, but so CART, as we know, it has been operated for about 35 years by the University of Oklahoma. They've done a great job. They've built on the system over many years. It has been funded by the Federal Transit Administration through a grant. We'll talk more about that. For the University of Oklahoma, I think mostly through student fees, City of Norman, State of Oklahoma, and Norman Regional Hospital over these most recent years. The city was notified by OU officials in August, so about a year ago, August 2018, that their revenues were insufficient to cover their expenses, and so they needed to make some changes. Either the city would pay more money or they would do some cuts. They ended up doing both. And City Council allocated additional funding, about $60,000 more in the previous year, in the amount of $635,500 in October of 2018. So between the city's additional contribution and some cuts in service, CART was able to operate within their budget last year in 2019. So we're talking tonight about transferring. So soon after that notice, OU also notified the city that they just were no longer interested in running a city or community bus service. Instead, they just wanted to run the campus routes, as they call them, for their students only. And so the city council began our conversations, I think, as early as September of last year to talk about, do you want to take it over? Does the city want to take it over? And if so, how are we going to do that? And so we've come tonight with kind of both of those answers. Yes, we're taking it over. And we'd like to do it by converting from the University of Oklahoma to the city of contracting with Embark, which is a wonderful agency in Oklahoma City, or an agency of Oklahoma City that operates the transit system there already. And it's been a pleasure to work with Embark throughout this process. So the council set out, I think, what I would call basic principles for us to follow, and we've tried to follow those. I hope that what we're presenting to you tonight follows those. Basically, you said that you wanted to designate the city of Norman as the grant recipient, so no longer the University of Oklahoma. Now the city of Norman would receive the grant from FTA. You wanted to transfer the service by July 1st, which was the request from the university, and we had our doubts, but I think we will have made it in some respects. In other respects, we're not quite going to make that, but we'll talk more about that tonight. And of course, including the transfer of all the federally funded assets. You wanted to coordinate with the FTA, make sure we follow all the federal guidelines and regulations. You wanted a smooth transition. I hope it's that. Most importantly, you wanted no break in service, so no gaps in service, keep the buses running, and then at least maintain the same level of service that we're at today. So a quick update, on June 25th, council met here and adopted that grant recipient resolution. So you effectively sent that message back to FTA that said that we thought we had met all the criteria to do that. Also on that night, you approved a contract with OU University to sort of do a bridge service. They would take care of all of the transit services this month, the month of July, until we could get to this meeting tonight. On July 1st, FTA then designated us as a grant recipient, so that was a key action that was critically important to the beginning of the process. On July 1st, then CART began, or OU began operating as a contractor of ours and began running the system as they're doing today. Tonight, we're here to kind of make that next step into the Embark contract, so taking some of that service and moving it from the university to Embark, and then doing a little bit more of that a little bit later. And beginning as early July and going into certainly September, Embark is scrambling to hire people and get all the resources in place to do what some have thought has been the impossible, but that is to get this system transferred over. So drivers, dispatchers, supervisors, you name it. Put that into context, that really is 35 new staff members that they didn't have before. They didn't need those in Oklahoma City. They need 35 people here to run this system. And they're hiring as we speak. I'm told that many of the laid off workers from the university have been rehired by Embark to serve in the same capacities. We appreciate that. So the transition plan, August 3rd, which is technically a Saturday, but August 5th is a Monday, Embark will begin operating the 7 fixed routes. If you approve these contracts tonight, CART will continue to operate the paratransit service, and we'll talk more about that here in a minute. And then on October 1st-ish, we hope, maybe even sooner, but in that range of October 1st, Embark will then be in a position to take over the paratransit service, and they will have assumed all of the operations, fixed routes, and paratransit. And the city will hopefully be in the position to take over the full fleet maintenance responsibilities for this large fleet that we're inheriting tonight. We're going to be doing that like Embark, doing our best to do that sooner if we can, but we too are scrambling to hire mechanics and service riders and others so we can take on this additional workload. So between August 3rd and December 31st, it's really like a 6-month transition plan. Think of it that way. The city will be leasing the CART facility, the beautiful CART facility that was built about 10 years ago, really for this purpose. We wish we owned that, frankly. It was a perfect place to run transit operations, but they've agreed to lease that to us for these various operations until we can get our own facility to do that, and I'll talk more about that. So this fall, we've already begun, again, looking for your direction tonight, we've already begun talking to architects and others about how quickly we can get a building built for bus maintenance and bus operations. As many of you know, we already have in your FY20 budget $875,000 in PSST funds for what was going to be an emergency vehicle maintenance facility. Our public safety partners have been gracious enough to let us combine these operations into a dual purpose. It really makes sense if you think about the size of a fire truck versus the size of a large bus, very similar chassis and space needs and so on. So we are beginning that conversation with architects and others to figure out, can we design and build a new fairly low-cost maintenance facility at North Base where our current fleet operation is, and can we do that quickly in order to get out of the lease at OU and move the operation into a city-owned facility. If everything goes as planned, we will have accomplished that, and on January 1st, we will have moved the entire operation away from the University of Oklahoma and into our own facilities, and we'll be contracting with Embark going forward as we are proposing tonight. So a little bit about the fleet as it relates to both operations and maintenance. We're inheriting 28 vehicles that we don't own today. 26 of those are used. 4 of those are large buses, 17 small, 5 supervisor vehicles. 2 are new vehicles, 2 large buses valued at about $1 million that OU was able to get through a grant. But if they keep them, they've got to pay the full $1 million. They'd rather give them to us, and we get to pay $100,000 each for a total of $200,000 for a brand new bus. We appreciate that. 17 of these vehicles, the used vehicles, have reached their useful life. So we're inheriting a, really old fleet, including 4 of the large buses. Average age of this fleet, 9 years. Cost of a new large bus, about $500,000. And they run for about 12 years in this kind of system. We currently have no budget. We're not establishing that tonight, but that's something for council to wrestle with in coming months. We have no budget currently in FY20 for fleet replacement, so that's something that we're going to have to deal with. So I'd like to just quickly go through the 5 items on your agenda tonight, items 4 through 8, and give a few highlights of each one. These are in order that they are on your agenda. So the first item is, when you adopted your 2020 budget, we didn't know yet what we were going to be doing, so you have no public transportation budget in your FY20 budget. The first thing to do is establish a budget cost center, if you will, special revenue fund for public transportation. We are estimating the total cost, if all of our conservative numbers were to come to pass this year, you will spend about $5.7 million on public transportation in Norman, which is, I know, kind of a staggering number. Let me elaborate on what went into that. The agreement with CART to take us between July 1st and October 1st, we're estimating you're going to spend about $700,000 with the university to provide that service. Then you're going to spend up to $2.428 million with Embark to cover the rest of this year's services. You're going to rent the OU facility for about $32,000. We're estimating you're going to spend about $900,000 internally to maintain the fleet. So fuel, parts, 3 new mechanics, rental of the space, and so on and so forth. We're recommending that we desperately need help to run this system. We need expertise. I was a little tongue-in-cheek with my initial comment, but frankly, no one on staff, including myself, have any real strong transit background or experience with running a federally funded transit system. So we really need someone on staff who can speak that language and who can write the grants and help us through that process. It's a very bureaucratic process working with the FTA program. So we're recommending a new position, a public transit coordinator position. Startup costs, I'll talk about that again here in a moment, but there are some costs of just converting the buses over, and you've got some options there in terms of when you spend that or how much of that you spend. And then, of course, I think the most important capital discussion tonight is buying the buses. We can't operate the system Monday if we don't own the buses. So if you do nothing else tonight, approve that Embark agreement and the purchase of the 28 buses for $327,000. 200 of that is in the 2 new buses. So we're getting 26 old buses for $127,000. There's not much value left in those other 26 vehicles. When you adopted your 2020 budget, you did do kind of a plug number, if you will. $1,135,000 is what you budgeted, just guessing. We were, frankly, at that time thinking that was going to be good. Little did we know as these numbers were going to grow. So just in the context of what you're doing here with this budget, we think it's going to take about $4,165,000 a year in operation and maintenance to run this system. You've got about 3.1 already budgeted between the FTA grant and general funds. So you're going to be short if all of this, again, if we spend every one of these dollars by the end of June of 2020, you will be short about $1 million in your general fund. And we're going to do everything we can to keep that from happening. We're going to be reviewing it with you monthly and quarterly to see if we can't bring some efficiencies into that. But if worst case happened and we spent every one of these dollars, you're going to need to allocate some more money in your general fund to cover this program. Same is true for capital. You have no capital budget for this operation. So between the one-time startup fees and the purchase of the buses, you're about 1.6 million short in your capital fund today. Second item on the agenda is an amendment of that contract I talked about with the University of Oklahoma. When you contracted with them late June, you were buying 1 month of service. We're recommending that you amend that now, and the university has agreed to amend it to provide 2 more months of service, this time not for fixed routes, only for paratransit and for fleet maintenance services. There's a rate, $70 per hour for the operation, and a rate of $105 per working hour for fleet maintenance. As I mentioned, as soon as we can hire mechanics and get them in that facility, we're going to convert away from the university providing that maintenance, and we're going to be providing it ourselves. And as soon as we can do that, we're going to do that. But in the meantime, we're going to be depending on their mechanics and their staff to maintain these buses. Third item on the agenda, authorization to purchase the 28 vehicles. As I mentioned, 26 of those are used vehicles, 2 are new large buses. Again, the 2 large buses came through a grant. They've never actually been put into service. So the first thing we'll do this week, if you approve this, is get those 2 new buses ready for service on Monday. There's a $200,000 grant match, local grant match for that, and the total amount to be paid for all 28 vehicles is $327,244. We literally have the tags ready and all. We're going to be making the visit to the tag office on Friday if you do this, and we're going to take some time at the tag office to get 28 vehicles registered and in service with city tags as of Monday. The fourth item is a lease agreement with the University of Oklahoma. Again, as I mentioned, we don't have space. We have nowhere to put the drivers and the buses and the mechanics. So the university has been kind enough to lease us part of their space that they were previously using for this purpose. And so you'll see lots of details here about office space, garage space, the term of the lease from August 3rd to December 31st. We're estimating the cost of this lease, $32,571.80. And as I mentioned, we're going to do everything we can to get a new city facility up and in service by January 1st. But frankly, that's a tall order. So we may be back extending this lease again if we are not able to meet that goal. And then finally, and I frankly think maybe most importantly, is the contract with Embark. As I mentioned, Embark is a trust authority of the city of Oklahoma City. The Central Oklahoma Transit and Parking Authority is their board, and their director, Mr. Fairbrush, is here tonight if you have questions of any sort for them. They've been kind enough to see outside of their boundaries of Oklahoma City and agree to come in and help us through this process of running our transit system. They truly are the experts, and every time I meet with them, I learn something that I didn't know. But they are the agency that you're contracting with this agreement. Embark would operate the city's public transit system. 7 fixed routes beginning on August 5th, so next Monday, and paratransit service beginning on October 1st. In the meantime, the university is operating the paratransit service as they do today. The contract amount not to exceed $2,428,493 for operations and administration. Operation of 7 fixed routes. They will help us with the grant administration and other FTA requirements. They will manage the CDBG bus pass program as CART has been doing for many years. They will help us with marketing and advertising, and they will run the paratransit operation throughout the remainder of FY20. And then the contract includes, as I mentioned, these one-time startup costs of about $1,218,646. Council will have the authority to approve all the spending. You're just setting aside this in the contract. But these are very practical issues. We need offices, we need computers, we need phones for these people. So we need to set up their offices at CART. or buy that equipment from the university, one or the other. They need to have those devices to do their jobs. We may need new fare boxes. We certainly need new fare boxes if we're going to go to the Embark system, but that's something that's built into this contract, as we're recommending that we provide free fares for 90 days. So assuming you approve this, the next 90 days, starting August 5th, anyone can ride the fixed routes at no cost. Our CART will continue to operate the paratransit system in their current system. And then starting on October 1st and going to the end of October, there will be 30 days of free fares on the paratransit system. So we are doing that for a number of reasons, or recommending that for a number of reasons. One of which, it's just easier, frankly. It's easier on you all, it's easier on us, it's easier on the buses, and I think it's certainly easier on the customers. It's a good gesture to our new customers here. But case in point, the cost to convert the fare boxes on these buses is $330,000. You may choose not to do that if you chose to continue with free fares or a different fare structure. So before we go out and spend $330,000 in order to collect $50,000, we would like to put a little hold on that for a while until we have a chance to catch our breath here and make those kinds of decisions. Closed circuit TV systems are important for security on buses. We need to have that. All these buses have CART signs all over the buses. We need those to be Embark signs now. And then, of course, we need a radio system in every bus for obvious communication purposes. So there will certainly be some capital expenses this year in order to get this fleet functioning as you want it to be. And then the last bullet here, just again mention here that the contract with Embark does not include fleet maintenance. We're doing that in-house. We're hiring additional mechanics, buying additional tools, doing all those things to do the maintenance of these 28 vehicles ourselves. Embark, we did talk about that early on. They just were not able to provide that service here to us. So we had no choice but to move it into our current fleet operation. And then I mentioned here too the new position, City Public Transit Coordinator. Finally, I just want to mention that we found a little glitch this afternoon. I want to be clear to it. I think you have it at your place there. We learned today that there were 3 vehicles mistakenly included and 3 excluded on the list of that transfer, the authorization to purchase. We have made those corrections. We have coordinated that with both agencies. We all agree that those are the right vehicles to have on the right list. We just in the process of coordinating, we just missed that. And so we want to make that correction tonight so we can get all the right vehicles transferred and titled this week. And then on item 8, the Exhibit E to the contract sets forth the specific vehicles to be leased to Embark. That will reflect the same change in the list. So I think that's it for me. Be happy to take questions. And as I mentioned, we have lots of real transit experts here in the audience that can help you with detailed questions.
Are there any council comments? Does not appear any. Are there any public comments?
Evan is not here. I don't know. He kind of
Please
suckered me into
Please introduce
showing up.
yourself.
Oh, John Priestley, 3844 Cedar Ridge. I just had a couple comments. You know, they say it's a beautiful facility over there, the duck pond, but at certain time you say, well, it's kind of absurd to go from point A to point B. You go all the way to the duck pond. My familiarity with Seattle, they have an area downtown that's, I think it's just 2 blocks, but it's about a mile long. You can jump on anywhere there, and whether or not it's your bus, you're immediately going to jump on a bus because there's always a bus there. So you ride for free to the next stop or wherever you know your bus is going to be stopping. It keeps people moving. It's not like you're sitting looking at the time. And just the other comment I had is, from what I understand, Edmond, even going from Oklahoma City to Edmond, and anywhere in Edmond, you ride a bus for free. And I'm not sure how they do that, but it might be worth looking into. That's all I had to say.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments? Seeing none, are there any final council comments? The motion on the floor is to adopt the resolution. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to adopt the resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you. On to item number 5, amendment number 1 to contract K 1819-150 with the Board of Regents of the University of Oklahoma, providing an extension of the service agreement to provide certain public transportation services, including paratransit management and operations and maintenance services for the city of Norman from August 5, 2019 through October 1, 2019. I'll entertain a motion to approve the amendment.
So moved.
Second.
The motion on the floor is to approve the amendment. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All vote. Motion to approve the amendment passes unanimously.
Thank you. On to item number 6, authorization for the purchase of 28 public transportation vehicles from the University of Oklahoma in the cumulative amount of $327,274.51 to be used to provide public transportation in the city of Norman and surrounding area, and authorizing the city manager to execute 28 corresponding bills of sale. I need a motion to approve or reject authorization of this purchase.
Motion.
to approve.
Second.
The motion on the floor is to approve authorization for this purchase. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to approve the purchase passes unanimously.
Thank you. On to item number 7, contract K 1920-32, a lease agreement between the City of Norman, Oklahoma and the Board of Regents of the University of Oklahoma for the lease of office space, service bays, fleet storage, and warehouse garage space to be used for providing transportation services from August 5th, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. I need a motion to approve or reject the lease agreement.
So moved.
Second.
The motion on the floor is to approve the lease agreement. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to approve the lease agreement passes unanimously.
Thank you. On to item number 8, contract K 19-30, an interlocal agreement with Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority, COTPA, doing business as Embark, to provide transportation services for the city of Norman from August 3rd, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, in amount not to exceed an annual amount of $2,428,293 for operational costs and additional pass-through costs, an amount not to exceed $1,218,646 for additional startup costs, and an amount not to exceed $35,000 for issuance of bus passes pursuant to Norman's Community Development Block Grant CDBG Bus Pass Program. I'll entertain a motion to approve or reject the contract with COTPA, doing business as Embark.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I will now entertain an amendment from Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you. I move that Exhibit E to contract K-1920-30 be replaced with the document labeled Replacement Exhibit E to reflect the correct vehicles being purchased from OU and leased to Embark under this contract.
Is there a second?
Second.
Council members, you may cast your vote
On the amendment. On the amendment. On the amendment.
on the amendment.
All votes have to approve the amendment passes unanimously.
Thank you. The motion on the floor is to approve the contract with COTPA, doing business as Embark, as amended. Council, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion as amended passes unanimously.
Before we adjourn, I want to express my interest as we overhaul our boards and commissions to create a public transit commission that will help us ensure that we get the public input needed to create the best bus system possible. So I want to thank you all for the special session tonight. Mr. O'Leary, thank you for your presentation. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.